Welcome back, guys. Today we'll be talking about the Kadas Opening. In this opening, you play as white, and you begin with the move h4. So the idea of this opening is, it has a few ideas in mind. So the first one is to do a rook lift to target the king early using rooks in the middle game, which is highly underrated. And the second idea is, let's say black fights for the center, which is kind of uncommon and weird. Then you push the pawn. So black can have many responses to this. They can immediately attack the pawn, they can ignore the pawn and play a5, or they can develop their pieces towards the center. So first we'll be covering developing their pieces towards the center. If they do this, what you want to do is, since the pawn is already defended by the rook, even if the knight attacks it, you want to play either d3 or d4. d3 is better because it represents the Mises opening, which is highly underrated. So we'll do that, and this also opens up the bishop. So it's preparing the move h6, making a pawn break on the side of the board, trading off vital pieces. But let's say your opponent hadn't moved the knight out, then in that case, then you would have to bring one of these two pieces, the knights, over to one of these two squares to defend this square. So for example, you could get this knight here, 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 and then there to go defend that square. So that's one idea. Or you could get one of these knights to go over here, then here, then here, and then here to defend the square. But let's say black develops the other knight, and now the move h6 is possible, and black is already at a disadvantage. So once you play h6, black has many ways to respond to this move, either by pushing, ignoring, or taking. So let's say they take. So taking is the simplest thing, because then you take the bishop, and it doesn't matter if they take you or you take them. If you take them, black won't have the chance to castle. If they take you, then you have an active rook immediately targeting the knight and the pawn, applying pressure. So it's probably best for them to keep the tension and, let's say, develop another piece. So once you take them, they take with the rook or something, then the evaluation skyrockets for white, and now black is stuck in the middle, so white will castle and then launch an attack. So let's say they, instead of taking, they push. If they push, then this pawn will stay here for eternity, and is defended by a ton of pieces. So in the endgame, if you get rid of this pawn or one of these two pawns, then you can promote that pawn. And this pawn will, if black decides to castle kingside, then it'll be a huge annoyance. And then finally, if they ignore, then if they ignore the pawn, I just say, do this, then you take. If they take, then you go and trade the bishops again. And you get the same scenario as last time, where you have a super powerful rook on the 6th rank, applying pressure everywhere. But let's go all the way back and say that instead of developing a piece, they immediately attack the pawn. So by pushing this pawn forward so much, you can immediately start to chip away at the kingside structure by taking. So if they attack, you want to take. You don't want to keep tension because that's not good. It's fine, but once you take, the best move is to take with this, as to not lose the rook. Then the whole king side kind of is under pressure, and then you'll proceed to castle queen side, and then launch an attack on the king side. And then, finally, if they launch a counter attack and just ignore the pawn, then you will also proceed to get ready to play the move h6. So in this example, you'll have to get one of these two pieces since the knight hasn't developed. So let's say you want to get that there, so the knight would have to go here, 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 right? So demonstrate. And now you're ready to play that move. So they play a4 launching their own attack, then you play this, after takes, 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 and takes. You have a rook, like, you have a super powerful rook, eyeing down all of the 6th rank, and black has a super weak king in the middle of the board, so you continue to develop, and then checkmate. So, that is how you play the Kadas Opening. And now I will show you some test games. For the first game, I'll be going over the 3-minute blitz game that I played. So, of course, starting off with h4, then e5, h5 advancing, d5 taking more space, and then d3 sticking to the plan and opening up the bishop to double the pawns. They check with the bishop, I block with the bishop, and then obviously to make me spend a move, to prevent h6, they had to back up, so I would spend a move taking the bishop, which was obviously a great move, very, very hard to find. Only top level players could ever find this. And then he develops the bishop using a tempo and to expand for the center. I go all the way back to continue with the plan. And then since the threat of h6 is so much, they have to block the queen. It's the only move. So ignore whatever this means. I'm not really sure. But after taking this, developing the knight, then taking the knight, and then playing h6, this position is completely lost for black, because as you can see, this one pawn completely dominates all of the other pawns in black's position in the endgame. So after rook to g8, controlling the open file, you bring the knight out, brings the rook up to try and get the pawn, I fork the rook and my own pawn, he takes the free pawn, and then I fight for the center, and then just plant my knight on that square. They take the free rook, but it's a trap because after the knight check and the queen movement, it's almost impossible to survive. Because after a little bit of stuff happens on the queen side, just a lot of drop by repetition type of moves. I launch a g pawn forward, then again with a tempo, and then fork, and then force a trade with the bishops. And after f6, it looks like a fortress. But after you trade off the rook, of course, this is another attempt to try a wasted move to prevent checkmate in the highest amount of moves as possible. Very stockfish-like. They resign the game afterwards because now I'm up 9 points of material, which isn't that much at this level, but it's very respectable to resign. That was the first game. Okay, so now for the second game. Instead of a 3-minute blitz match, this is a 1-minute bull game. So, of course, the moves will be a little bit inaccurate, but since I'm playing the Kadas Opening, of course, I played near 99 percentile. The game review obviously doesn't want to tell you that. So, I start off with the move h4, like so. And then, just like the other opponent, just like the last game, our opponent's builds for the center. I out of the craziness of bullet, push the h pawn forward instead of opening up the bishop to double the pawn. So they take the knight, then I do that, then they move the knight to not get captured, then I kick it out, then they move back, and then I capture it, doubling the pawns. So then I do this to try and go trade off the pawn for the very active bishop, very, very active. So they do that, I develop the knight, they do this, I start firing at the middle, exploding the center, then they attack the knights, I move the knights, and then they continue to push the A and B pawns, trying to attack over here. I take the pawn, they play B3, trying to chip away at the queen side at none of the pawns I've moved, and they have advanced their pawns like 4 and 3 squares. So obviously I take, they don't take back, I take, and then I takes, and then develop the knight, blocking my other knights. They move their bishop over there, I attack for the rook, they fork, I attack for the rook, they go back, I take the free bishop, they attack the queen, thinking it's a brilliant move, but you can block for the knight. Then you take, opening up the b file by the way. Opening up the diagonal to the king, so I take the free pawn, and they move the rook, I take the other pawn, they move that rook, check, we trade rooks. Then I go over here trying to get close to the king, and they attack the rook, I move over there, clean trade. Trade the queens. Then, obviously if you couldn't tell, this is a very hidden tactic, because after you played knight to b4, if you take the knight, it's actually like a draw in 50 moves by the king's positioning on the board. Obviously, Stockfish can't really tell this because it's just not that intelligent. Obviously, can't really see 9 million moves into the future. But there's obviously a reason I didn't take this knight, of course. So I trade queens, then move the king forward, and then they take the knight, so I'm almost forced to take for the rook. And then they move the rook there, taking over the open file, just checking, picking up the pawns, and checking, and then flagging them. And that is basically the second game. And that's how you play the Kadas Opening. Thanks for watching.